So I did a fair amount of country driving last week when I went to be with my brother. It's January up there. Bleak and gray, hills and valleys, rock and dirt, winter. Someone called me and let me know that there were flowers pushing up on Bucknell campus. There are often mini thaws, but this is too early. We haven't had a really long, hard freeze yet. I saw a bug on my door when I got home. So the fact that we haven't had a freeze was witnessed by the fact that there were men with horses harrowing a local field up by Tom. Some of the most beautiful bays. Two sets of two, one pulling a guy seated on a harrower, one guy walking behind the horses with the harrow pulled behind him. I looked at one of the willows by a stream up there, and it's beginning to turn a bold golden color. Too early, I thought, and then I remembered, no, this is right on time. This is photosynthesis doing its job. The sun is at the right angle, and the colors turn. It's Groundhog Day today, that Pennsylvania celebration of animal magnetism. The boy hogs get up to go check the burrows of potential mates to make sure they're still alive. Married on Groundhog's Day, I guess I hadn't really figured out that this is perhaps why Steve and I never shared a burrow. We liked sleeping single in the cold of winter. He wanted the air conditioner on. I did not. But this year, because I was still reading Wilding by Isabella Tree, I was thinking more about beaver. They're also hibernators. When I read a book like the author's, I'm astonished by what I don't know. I've seen beaver when I was younger. There was always a dam up by World's End. I guess I hadn't realized that there aren't any more because they've been hunted or chased out. In England, there are no beaver anymore, although they once numbered in the many millions. Their fur is luxurious, and they interrupted human control of the waterways. But then you listen, and it struck me as I was reading that, and she didn't say any of this, but of course that was what happened with industrialization. When that started, as they began to move goods around, they built those canals, and they couldn't have the beaver dropping their logs into those canals. But if you read about what those beaver are doing at Yellowstone and what they're having to do to imitate them at Knepp, the estate in the book, you realize what we've destroyed in the name of luxury and tidiness. Rather than building walls and canals to take care of flooding, we need more wetlands, more meandering streams and ponds created by industrious beaver. By imitating ancient natural water runoff, one town changed their record from 2 in 100-year floods that happened in 1 year to what they're suggesting might not be a flood for another 1,000 years because the water has a place to go. You'd think I'd understand it's not just the warming from gases that's causing the climate crisis, but it's also the engineering of the land, where we like everything to be tidy, which is not in our best interest for biodiversity. You can imagine how I love that bit of information. Nature is gloriously untidy. I knew there had to be some way I was close to nature, even though I'm a concrete priestess. I've realized I know nothing real and concrete about beaver. What I know about them, I learned from children's picture books, completely disconnected to the important work they do. At this time of year, the beaver's job is to wake, to rise, and to repopulate, or at least check out their repopulation options, that they might help change the shape of our landscape. Our work here is to help them find ground to stand on and water to swim in. Ancient holidays like Groundhog Day grew from the seasons, the sunlight and the ground. For instance, we're currently celebrating the snow moon. You might think that was something to be feared. And indeed, blizzard conditions made hunting difficult, and you could easily get turned around and be unable to find your way home, which could be fatal. But the longer days and the bright sun that came with Imbolc, which means in the womb of, meant tracking prey was much easier. and sleepy beaver and groundhogs and whatever else started popping out of burrows, the womb of the earth, made for easy eating. The early peoples lived off the land and not through commerce. They took what they needed to eat and used furs for clothing and blankets. They didn't demolish a species to trade their furs for rich people's clothing. I'm sure at each of the turnings there was some celebration, because you don't get through the cold and the dark without it. Celebrating is a human need that can be indulged when bellies are full. Rituals gather people together, make light work through many hands, and cement community bonds. We need one another, as the reading says. All our lives we are in need. These ancient celebrations still call out to us. Why else do we have an ice festival in Lewisburg and winter festivals in other towns, if not to remind us that there is joy and community? This was also a holiday of initiation. It is taught that there were 3 days of meditation and fasting before reawakening and rededicating oneself to the new work. The modern religious commemoration of Candlemas is left from ancient markings of the season's turning. In it, the church candles that will burn for the rest of the year are blessed. Why then, we wonder? Because at that point in history, or in that point in the year, people had butchered at Yule to lighten the herd that must be fed throughout the winter, and to provide food for the winter. Meat was frozen in caches, and if they could be made secure, because no one wanted to invite the wolves to your door, every bit of the meat and carcass was used. All of this work was done communally around a fire. So songs were sung, stories were told, histories were recited. Bonds were formed as the meat was processed and skins were tanned. Eventually, the tallow was used for lamps and candles. By the time you got around to that, it was pretty much the beginning of what we know as February. Now that light was returning, those candles could be burned as needed, but also stored up against next year. Candlemas is built not only upon the lights that will burn, but also on the ancient celebrations of the light that returns to wake us up. On this day of spectacular palindrome to 02/02/2020, we are called not just to wake, but to rise. To rise as the sap begins in the trees, as the beaver and the groundhogs do. Again, it isn't just the waking, it is the rising and taking up of one's work. Today, on this holiday, there is particular work to be done, your own particular work as well as the work of community. If we lived seasonally, we would be ending our time of introspection. Our thanks to Ed, who spent his January in meditative retreat. Thank you for this work and for whatever sanity and peace we gain from putting our heads next to yours. For being in your rebalanced, re-inspired company. Big shoes. He can at least light a fire. What better time to hit pause and reset than in the insanity that is our world at the moment? Annual observances remind us that life is an ongoing spiral in which we must engage and disengage in the preparation of waking and rising again. If I had, it's just the way my mind is not working these days, I had a necklace laid out that someone had given to me for my installation, which is this is also St. Bridget's Day, and they didn't celebrate in the Celtic tradition. They didn't celebrate groundhog, but hedgehogs, and so I've got a thing with a circle with a lot of little hedgehogs walking around it. But the sun rises earlier and earlier. The bell sounds, we awaken, and then we rise. It isn't our waking, it's our rising. In this quiet time in my life, I reflect that I don't tend to ask you what you believe. That's probably a missed opportunity on my part. Some of the reason for that is because I'm really a believer in the UU motto, deeds, not creeds. I am most interested in how you seek and then how your spiritual rubber hits the road. I don't believe that a spiritual life is only seeking. It is an interesting dance with seeking, coming to know, and then making it visible in the world as an invitation to justice and peacemaking. There are so many ways to do that, and at UUCSV, there are people working at that in so many ways. I believe other people are hungry for what we're offering, a place to belong. Studies show people are really looking for a place to belong where they can put their spiritual rubber on the road. They want weekly services and hope for a better world right here and right now, shaped by their hands and those of their neighbors, for themselves, for their neighbors, and for the world. People are really quite generous, looking for ways to ensure that no one lives in need. I look with astonishment and proud gratitude at how this little congregation continues to support migrants, children who need food on the weekend, and people who are hungry for baked goods and community in a park. Every 3 months, we send another $1,000 or so to a local charity. And Lois is looking to get the Social Care and Justice Committee together again. There'll be a questionnaire out soon, and fill it in and talk about, what you care about, not what you think other people should do, but what you're interested in doing. We have something quite wonderful that is worth sharing with the world. Honoring that, the membership committee is reigniting Bring a Friend Sunday, not seen around here since the aughts. March 22 is an opportunity to offer spiritual community to people you know. You can be specific or general in your invitation, but invite folk. If this place means comfort, encouragement, and community to you, it might mean that to others. We're here together so we can be in the world more easily. As you know, I'm quite a fan of Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Movement, a Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. He called my attention to the phrase, "It's not the waking but the rising," early last year. I've been living with it and what I think it means. He now adds, "And it's the standing fast." But these words come to us, I know them from Hosier's song, "Cry Power Nina," and I'll close with this portion of the first verse. It's not the waking, but the rising. It's not the song, it is the singing. It is the heaven of a human spirit ringing. It is the bringing of the line. It is the bearing of the rhyme. It's not the waking, it's the rising. Together we rise. Together we help everyone rise and stand. Blessed be.